How can we talk about ourselves in the way that you're talking that will bring business to us as well?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, you need to teach what you know, like plain and simple. When people don't know what to speak about or what to teach about or how to share, it's because you're trying to stretch yourself into a space that you don't belong in, right? So the number one thing with podcasting to get started right away and have endless streams of content is to be clear on what is your gift? What area do you have knowledge and expertise in? What is your experience? What is the thing that you know so intimately and so well that you could speak on that topic for hours, not need notes, not be following a slide deck, not be reading a script, but instead speaking from the heart? That is what you need to be podcasting about. And everyone has that. Maybe for you, it's gardening, or maybe for you, it's sports, or, maybe you collect collectibles of some kind. My husband collects records, for example, like whatever that is, everybody has something. Now, let's say you're like, well, Kelly, that's not the thing that I want to make my podcast about, but there's always lessons. There's always a connection point that you can make. So you start with what you know intimately, be natural, don't follow a script. I think the worst user experience is when you go in and you listen or interact with someone that you can tell they're reading from a script. You can tell that everything is a canned answer. No one wants that. It is
I have to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Because I got a question on that.
Mm-hmm.
Your podcast was so perfect. Like when I was listening to it, it was so polished. It was like you knew what you were going to say right after. Mm-hmm. Not that you were thinking about it. And I literally sat there thinking, like, is she just the best ever at reading something but sounding like she's not reading? Or
I don't have that level.
or is she like so knows this content so well that it just flows?
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens when you do 1,200 episodes. And not only that, but for 6 years now, I've gone on 2 shows of other people's every week. So you have to think that's 4 shows I'm doing a week minimum, right? And I'm teaching what I know. So when I send my podcast to the editor, they don't actually edit my podcast. Like we don't do takes, we don't do retakes. I don't go back and do re-records, nothing. They are literally snipping the front, snipping the end, catching any, like if there's the doorbell rings or the dog barks or, whatever. And that just happens with practice over time. There's no shortcut. You just run the reps, just like an athlete. An athlete shows up for practice every day and they run the same basic drill thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Podcasting is the same way. Your first few episodes, you're going to be nervous. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're probably going to have a ton of edits because you're going to have to re-record 50 times. I mean, it's not going to be pretty, right? But if you keep running those drills, eventually you will get to a place where you can speak from the heart totally naturally and record a 30-minute or an hour-long podcast without missing a beat.
It reminds me of a quote that I heard, but I don't think I'll be able to quote it exactly. And it was something to the effect of, you practice not until you can get it, but you practice until you can't not get it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
interesting. Good stuff. So with those 6 years, you've been doing 2 guest spots per week. And I want to know why. I think the listener wants to know why. They're probably curious why you're making that so intentional. Why is it 2 a week? Because some of us, we don't even try to get on other people's podcasts. So would you mind going into that?
Absolutely. Well, it's for the reasons that I just explained about the presidential campaign. The way that I have been able to expand my audience and go beyond anything that I ever could have done on my own is by leveraging the power of other people's audiences. So today there's someone listening to this show that's like, Kelly Roach, who the heck is this woman? But you know what? After this show is done, there's going to be people that are like, oh yeah, Kelly Roach. And they'll probably come check out my show. And one of the biggest things, podcasters many times stop their podcast because they can't figure out how to grow their podcast. And one of the fastest, easiest ways to grow your podcast is by going on other podcasts. So you asked me at the beginning of the show, how have I grown and grown and grown the podcast? Well, not only is it promoting my shows to my own audience, but then every week going on new shows. And every single time I go on a podcast and they say at the end of it, where should our listeners go find you? Guess what I say at the end? The Kelly Roach Show. Because I know the most valuable thing that I can do is get people to consume my long form content. Way more valuable than following a social media post, or even sometimes don't, kill the messenger. Sometimes more valuable than getting on my email list. Because if someone becomes an avid fan of the podcast, they're going to do all those things anyway. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again, where people, my clients that I have today, will tell me, I heard you on this show. Then I started listening to your show. And then I joined the program.